Revealed, how I turned my husband's deception into an amazing life-changing triumph in court. Emily's heart raced as she tore open the envelope she had found hidden beneath a pile of bills. A $5,000 withdrawal receipt from their joint savings account. The world around her blurred. How could Jake do this? How could the man she trusted, the father of her 2 children, betray her like this? Anger surged within her, tightness constricting her chest. Every hope she had for Sam and Mia's future, every plan for their education and dreams felt like they were shattering. She stared at the receipt, tears blurring her vision, fighting to keep every ounce of pain from spilling over for her kids' sake. As the sun sank lower, casting long shadows in their modest living room, Emily felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. She had worked tirelessly at the diner, balancing shifts and school runs, trying to create a stable life for her kids. And now this? Her life, once defined by the chaotic yet comforting routine of motherhood, now felt like a precarious tightrope. But in that moment of despair, an ember of resolve sparked inside her. She couldn't let Jake's addiction dictate their destiny. Her eyes hardened with determination. She had to take control. That evening, surrounded by supportive neighbors who squeezed into her small living space, Emily shared her heartbreak. Their stories echoed her own losses and battles fought in silence. One neighbor, Sylvia, smiled through her tears, saying, "Emily, we're all fighting our own wars. You're not alone." Inspired by this newfound solidarity, Emily resolved to document her journey. She wasn't just going to chase after the stolen money, she was preparing to give a voice to the countless families grappling with hidden struggles. The emotions bubbled within her, igniting a passion she didn't know existed. Each shared story of courage and kindness uplifted her spirit, galvanizing her to stand up not just for herself, but for every parent quietly suffering beneath the surface. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As trial day dawned, fear clawed at her. The courtroom loomed ahead, an imposing structure echoing with whispers of judgment. But with every shaky breath, Emily remembered the neighbors who believed in her, and she walked inside with her head held high, ready to confront the man who had shattered her trust. Facing Jake behind the wooden podium felt surreal. The tension hung thick, charged with unspoken pain. Gasps echoed as fresh revelations emerged, truths that rattled everyone present. Was her family merely a casualty in his pursuit of hollow gains? Each admission thudded heavily, but as she shared her experience, she felt the eyes of the audience lock onto her. They saw her not as a victim, but as a fighter, and then the unexpected happened. A twist in the narrative that could change everything and send her hard-fought battle spiraling into chaos loomed before her. What new revelations would emerge, and could they threaten not only her justice but the fragile stability of her family? The courtroom held its breath. Emily's heart raced as she stood before the judge. The courtroom felt cold and sterile, filled with the weight of unspoken truths. As she prepared to recount her story, a sudden hush fell over the room. Jake leaned back with a smug expression, yet there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, as if he knew something would come crashing down. "Your Honor," Emily began, her voice steadying despite her nerves. "This isn't just about the money. It's about trust, love, and the future of my children." Each word she spoke felt more powerful, as if she were collecting strength from the air around her. Her eyes swept over the spectators, friends, and neighbors who had rallied behind her. Many nodded in encouragement. She remembered Sylvia's words. She wasn't alone. With that thought, she pressed on, detailing the countless sacrifices she had made, every late-night shift at the diner, every moment spent juggling the kids' needs with her own dreams. Just as she was gaining momentum, Jake's attorney sprang to life, dismissively pointing out the angles. Emily's a single parent now, but she always had her own choices. "What makes her story so special?" he asked, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. It was a punch to her gut, but instead of faltering, it ignited her. Because every choice matters when a family is built on deception. Every choice matters when your partner chooses addiction over family. The room gasped collectively, feeling the weight of her words. Jake's face twisted, shadows gripping the corners of his jaw. Emily continued, aware of the audience's eyes fixed on her, absorbing her pain and strength like a sponge. She took a deep breath and shared the raw truth about her life with Jake: the lies, the missing money, the times she had held back tears while playing the role of a happy wife. Each revelation was a call to arms for anyone who had been silenced by shame. Just then, an unplanned interruption shattered the moment. A figure entered the courtroom, a woman from Jake's past, who was rumored to have influenced his destructive spiral. She stood there, her own emotions starkly visible, as if she had just been thrust into the spotlight without warning. "Emily, I need to talk to you," she called out, her voice trembling. "There's something you don't know." Gasps echoed again throughout the room, a mixture of shock and intrigue. The judge looked momentarily taken aback, signaling for a brief recess. Emily's throat tightened as curiosity and fear intertwined. What could this woman possibly have to share? Jake, in his corner, suddenly seemed smaller, his bravado cracking under the weight of unforeseen truths. For a moment, Emily's anger slipped away, replaced by an overwhelming current of fear. Would this new information destroy everything she had been fighting for? The recess stretched on, tension thick in the air. Emily glanced at the spectators, the neighbors whose faith in her had become her lifeline. It wouldn't end here. She wouldn't let it. But what would this woman reveal? Just when she thought she had control, the threads of her narrative twisted again. As the judge called them back in, Emily steeled herself. She was ready to hear whatever came next. But in the pit of her stomach, the question lingered: would this revelation push her closer to victory or plunge her deeper into chaos? The judge tapped his gavel, the sharp sound cutting through the tension in the room. Emily's heart pounded as she sat up straighter, every instinct telling her to prepare for whatever was about to unfold. The woman she still didn't know her name stepped toward the stand, her eyes darting between Jake and Emily. It was as if she held secrets that could change everything. "Your Honor," the woman began, her voice shaky but gaining strength. "My name is Lisa. I worked with Jake a long time ago. I never wanted to get involved, but now I see just how much pain he has caused." Emily's thoughts raced. What could this woman possibly say that would matter? She felt Jake's gaze, heavy and desperate. Uncertainty flickered in his eyes, and she could sense the balance shifting. Jake struggled, Lisa continued, her voice low. "He was obsessed with quick money and that led him down a dark path. But I watched it spiral out of control." She hesitated, collecting her thoughts. Emily felt both dread and a strange kind of hope. If Lisa's revelation could shed light on why Jake had been so reckless, maybe it could help her case. "I cared for him once, but I had to leave when things got too dangerous. I thought he'd hit rock bottom, but he was only getting started," Lisa said, her voice breaking slightly. "He lied to you, Emily. About the money and his promises. He was involved in more than just gambling. I saw him deal with people who wanted to hurt him. I think he thought he could outrun them all." The room held its breath. Emily could feel the warmth of her friend's support even among the shock. She scanned the faces in the audience, several looked horrified, understanding the weight of what Lisa was saying. "It's not an excuse for his actions," Lisa pressed on, eyes glistening with courage. "But I wanted you to know that he wasn't just playing games. He was lost, scared." Jake crossed his arms, visibly fuming. "This is nonsense. You're just trying to save yourself." He spat out, but his words felt weak, as if they were only echoes of his fading power. Emily exhaled, her heart steadying. "You're right, Lisa. It's time I see him for who he really is, a husband who placed himself above our family. I didn't know the depth of your involvement, but knowing this helps me start to understand." "Emily, please, you don't need to listen to her." Jake's voice rose, panic seeping through. "She's just doing this for attention. I had nothing to do with any of that." "Then why didn't you tell me?" She shot back, her tone unwavering. Why didn't you come clean from the beginning? The judge looked down at Jake, clearly unimpressed. Your behavior is under scrutiny, and your past is being unveiled, Mr. Johnson. We need to get to the heart of the matter. Emily felt the pieces coming together. Lisa had risked everything to stand up. This was a shift, not just for her case but perhaps for her own healing. The judge gestured for them to settle down, signaling for Lisa to remain on the stand. Can you provide any evidence of Jake's involvement with these individuals? He asked, his brows furrowing. Lisa nodded, her expression resolute. I have documents, records from bank accounts and people who can testify about his dealings. Emily's heart leaped at the mention of evidence. Could this be it? The key to proving that Jake was unfit to make decisions for their children. As Lisa began to share more secrets from Jake's dark past, Emily couldn't help but wonder if her intuition had finally led her to a turning point. But, with every revelation, another question pricked at her mind. Could she truly trust that this new ally wasn't also hiding something? As the courtroom transformed into a battleground of truths and lies, Emily braced herself. Every moment felt monumental, every word could shift the tides. Would this be the truth that finally freed her, or a deeper trap waiting to ensnare her spirit once more? Lisa took a deep breath, letting the gravity of her words settle in the room. The records show transactions that go back years, money going in and out of accounts you wouldn't expect. Her voice trembled, but her resolve remained. I have names. People who were involved in the shady deals, people who wanted him to pay. Jake's chair creaked as he leaned forward, his face pallid with fear. You're lying. None of this is true. His voice was strained, cracking under the pressure. The judge raised a hand, silencing him. Ms. Lisa, please provide what you have. The court deserves to see the evidence of these allegations. Emily's heart raced. The documents could change everything. This was no longer just about her and Jake, it was about their children's future. Could Lisa's evidence really paint the picture of a man so broken that he was unfit to be around them? Lisa pulled out a folder, handing it to the court clerk. These are banking records. I've highlighted the transactions that seem suspicious. She turned her gaze to Emily, her eyes bright with purpose. I had to show you the truth. It's only fair you know what you're up against. As the judge flipped through the documents, Emily felt a swell of gratitude. For the first time in a long while, she felt like someone was fighting for her. For their children. But, as Lisa shared more about Jake's life, his gambling debts, his connections to dangerous figures, the lies, Emily's stomach twisted with an unsettling mix of emotions. Was Jake really the victim he presented himself to be, or was he a master of deception, weaving a web of falsehoods to ensnare her? Your Honor, Lisa continued, I want to clarify. I want to excuse Jake's actions. The consequences of his choices have hurt many people, including Emily and the kids. But there were times when I saw glimpses of the man he once was, a man I thought might choose the right path. Jake's face fell as his defenses crumbled. The facade he'd maintained for so long began to unravel. He was losing control, and with that loss, Emily felt a tumult of emotions, anger, sadness, and a flicker of relief. Did this mean she could finally be free of the manipulation that had clouded her life for years? A man who made bad choices, the judge murmured, pondering the weight of Lisa's testimonies. He glanced at Jake, whose expression had turned to one of panic. Mr. Johnson, is there anything you would like to say? Jake's jaw clenched, struggling to form words. This is all a misunderstanding. I didn't want any of this. He looked wild, desperate. Misunderstanding? Emily replied, rising to meet his gaze. You made choices that put us all in jeopardy. This isn't just about you anymore. The murmurs in the audience grew louder, mixed opinions and hushed whispers casting a shadow over Jake. Emily felt the tide of public sentiment shifting away from him. She had fought hard to reach this point, and it was finally happening. But, as relief washed over her, doubt crept in. What if Lisa was hiding something? What if this was just the beginning of another plot twist? Lisa, the judge said, shifting his focus back to her, Do you have people ready to testify to these statements? I do, she replied firmly, meeting his gaze. They fear for their safety because of Jake. But they'll step forward if necessary. It's time the truth came to light. Emily swallowed hard. The echo of every heartbeat seemed amplified in the court. This was at the moment where everything changed. As the judge called for the next witness, Emily realized how much was at stake. Each revelation, each testimony would either set her free or plunge her deeper into uncertainty. Was she really ready for the full truth, no matter how painful? And just as the door swung open for the next witness to step in, Emily felt a rumble of doubt within her. How far would she have to go to face the truth, and what would it reveal about the man she thought she knew? The door opened slowly, and in walked a woman with an air of hesitance, yet determination flickering in her eyes. Emily's heart raced. She'd never met this witness, but Lisa seemed to trust her. The judge motioned for her to take a seat. Everyone watched as the woman, perhaps in her mid-30s, tried to steady her trembling hands. Your Honor, she began, her voice shaking, my name is Sarah, and I was involved with Jake for let's say a complicated period of time. Emily felt a chill shoot down her spine. Complicated? How many secrets were buried in that word? The courtroom buzzed with whispered questions as people leaned in. I didn't know what I was getting into, Sarah continued, her gaze darting nervously from the judge to Lisa, and then to Jake, who was visibly agitated. Jake painted a picture of himself as a hard worker, someone committed to his family. But that wasn't the truth. With each word, tension uncoiled in Emily. Was this finally the moment when the veil would lift? She leaned forward, listening intently. I met him in a casino, Sarah admitted, shame washing over her face. He was charming, and he pretended to care, but it was all about money. Money he didn't have. The details began to unfold like a dam breaking. He had debts, serious debts. He told me he was going to fix them, said he had it all under control. But I found out otherwise. One night, I overheard him talking to some very dangerous people about repayments. I was terrified. Jake's face paled. His usual bravado crumbled more with each revelation. Emily noticed the people in the courtroom leaning forward, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern. Could Jake's world truly be that dark? I ended things with him, Sarah went on, gaining a little steadiness. I couldn't be part of that life anymore. But I didn't go to the police. I was scared. I thought if I did, he would hunt me down. She took a deep breath, gathering her strength, but now, seeing what he's put you through, you deserve the truth. As her voice trembled, it echoed in Emily's heart. How many other lives had Jake damaged along the way? The idea of Jake living among them, wearing a mask every day, felt like a betrayal, a cold stab of reality. Your Honor, Lisa interjected softly, this was just one woman among many that Jake manipulated. He doesn't just gamble with money, he gambles with people's trust. Emily's emotions swirled. She felt anger towards Jake but also empathy for Sarah. What Jake had done to her, he had done in different ways to Emily and their family. This was a cycle of deceit that needed to break. Jake shot a desperate glance at Emily. You don't understand. I did what I had to do. His voice, once full of bravado, cracked like glass. Did what you had to do? Emily snapped back, hurt and rage sparking in her eyes. Look around. You're hurting everyone. It's time for all this to stop. The judge seemed deeply affected, the weight of every testimony settling heavily over him. Mr. Johnson, your fate seems to be aligning with the shadows of your past. Would you like to respond? Jake's lips trembled, caught between a web of his own making. They're lying. You have to believe me. His voice held an edge of desperation that reverberated off the courtroom walls, but as he spoke, Emily felt the shift within herself. She was done with fear. She had given Jake so much more than he ever deserved. You have deceived everyone, and the truth is catching up to you, Jake, she said, her voice steady. Maybe it's time to face the music. As the next witness entered the room, Emily's heart skipped a beat. Who would step forward now? What further truths would emerge? As the narrative unfolded, she sensed this was just the beginning of a much bigger revelation that might shatter everything she knew about their life together. Could she brace herself for the unimaginable? The air in the courtroom shifted again as the next witness stepped into view. Emily squinted, trying to make out the figure moving toward the stand. It was a man in his early 40s, wearing a crisp white shirt and glasses that framed his serious expression. A sense of familiarity washed over her, but she couldn't place him. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady but low, "my name is Eric, and I was once friends with Jake." The murmurs in the gallery picked up, curiosity rippling through the crowd. Emily held her breath. This was someone who had walked alongside Jake, had seen parts of him that perhaps no one else had. Eric glanced briefly at Jake, who was shifting uncomfortably in his seat. "I thought I knew him well. We shared great times, but there was always something lurking under the surface. Something dark." Jake's demeanor shifted, anger flashing in his eyes. "You don't know what you're talking about, Eric," he shouted, his voice echoing. "Let him speak, Mr. Johnson," the judge replied, his tone sharp. Eric took a breath, grounding himself. "I was the one who introduced Jake to gambling. At first, it seemed harmless. We played cards, had fun. But I had no idea he'd spiral out of control." He closed his eyes for a moment, clearly reliving painful memories. "I watched him lose everything, his job, his family, all of it, because he thought he could gamble his way out of debt." Emily could feel her stomach knot. She had seen the aftermath of Jake's choices but never realized how deep the roots of his problems ran. "How could I have been so blind?" she thought. "I tried to help him," Eric continued, "but Jake pushed me away each time I reached out. He was good at acting like everything was fine, even when it wasn't." He paused, looking down. "One night, I confronted him about the debts. He got furious, called me a traitor." Jake's face turned a shade darker. "You think you're any better? You weren't there when I needed you. You let me fall." "Sometimes falling is the only way to see the truth," Eric shot back. Emily's heart raced, struck by the clarity of his words. It felt like the truth was crescendoing to a peak, revealing a painful reality. She remembered how often Jake had downplayed their issues, always promising to fix things. Yet here were the shattered remnants of broken promises splattered across the room. "Your Honor," Eric said, redirecting his focus, "Jake's issues go beyond gambling. It's a cycle of his lies and deceptions that ensnared not just him but everyone around him. I'm here to shed light on how he manipulates those close to him." Emily's emotions surged as Eric's account pierced through the fog of confusion Jake had created. She looked at Jake, seeing him not as the man she loved at one time, but as a man unraveling, clutching at tendrils of control that he had lost long ago. The man she thought she knew was nothing but a collection of masks, each more deceptive than the last. "Jake, have you ever really thought about how far you've pushed things?" Emily found herself asking, her voice trembling with both the weight of the moment and an unexpected vulnerability. "How many lives are you willing to ruin? How many people are you willing to betray?" Jake's eyes darted nervously, caught in a glimmer of fragility, but the bravado still lingered. "I'm not done yet," he shouted, a mix of fear and anger coloring his tone. This was more than a courtroom drama, it felt like a reckoning. Emily breathed deeply, sensing the gravity of the moment pressing down on their lives. Could this day lead to an actual change? Or was this just another chapter in his elaborate con? As Eric turned to face Emily, compassion flickered in his eyes. "You need to take back your life, Emily. You deserve better." With those words resonating in her mind, Emily realized she stood on a precipice, a moment where she could either dive into the deep unknown or turn back. But all she had ever wanted was a clear path forward, away from Jake's shadows. She took a deep breath, her heart racing, and whispered to herself, "I can't go back now." But how far would she be willing to go to find the truth and reclaim her life? As the next witness prepared to step up, the tension in the room mounted, leaving Emily anxious and determined. Would the next voice provide the closure she so desperately sought, or would it pull her deeper into Jake's twisted world? The atmosphere in the courtroom felt electric, charged with a mix of tension and anticipation. Emily gripped the edges of her seat, her mind racing at the possibilities of what the next witness would reveal. She stole a glance at Jake, who had resumed fidgeting with his cufflinks, a nervous habit he picked up during times of stress. It irritated her, yet at that moment, it also made her heart ache for the man he might have been without the weight of his demons. The sound of footsteps echoed as the next witness approached the stand. A woman in her 30s, dressed in a navy blue blazer, carried an air of composure. When she spoke, her voice was soft yet edged with conviction. "Your Honor, my name is Sarah. I worked with Jake at the marketing firm for almost 5 years." Emily's instincts flared. A former colleague? What could Sarah possibly say that would change the narrative unfolding here? "Go ahead, Miss Smith," the judge encouraged, his eyes coolly observing the witness. "I was in charge of our team's finances," Sarah began, stealing a glance in Jake's direction. "And during my time at the firm, I noticed odd things happening. Budgets were being manipulated under his authorization. Trips that didn't happen, invoices that were always late." Her voice trembled slightly as she continued. "I confronted Jake about it. He assured me everything was fine." Jake's face turned pale. His eyes shot up to meet Emily's, a mixture of fear and defiance swirling within them. "Those were just mistakes," he barked, frustration lacing his tone. "You don't understand." "No, Jake," Sarah replied firmly, her eyes narrowing. "I do understand. It was about trying to cover your tracks. You were playing with all of our lives." The revelation hung heavy in the air. Emily had suspected that Jake's lying didn't just affect their personal lives, it was bigger than that. But to hear proof of his deceit painted an even darker picture. "Did you ever report this?" The prosecutor pressed, urgency in his voice. "I tried, but he was so charming when he wanted to be. He made me doubt myself," Sarah admitted, looking down briefly as if recalling a painful past. "I was young and naive. I didn't want to believe someone I trusted could do something so wrong." A ripple of empathy washed over the gallery. Emily felt it, too. It was hard to judge someone when they had been ensnared by the same illusions she had fallen victim to. "Did it impact your view of him?" the prosecutor continued. Sarah hesitated. "It did. I believed he was capable of greatness, but greatness isn't built on lies." Emily's heart pounded in her chest. That was it, there was the truth. Jake's greatness was nothing but an illusion. She had spent too long thinking he was the best of men when, underneath, it was all starting to crumble away. Jake's voice broke through her thoughts. "You don't know anything about me." The fervor in his eyes was unnerving, as if she might be the one who was betraying him now. "If you had just opened up, Jake. If you had just let us in." Sarah's voice wavered but remained resolute. "We would have helped you. We could have turned things around. But now, look where you are." Emily felt a palpable mix of anger and sadness welling up inside her. How many chances had he squandered? How many times had he twisted the truth to suit his needs? The man standing before her was not the same man she had once laughed with over coffee. As Sarah stepped down from the stand, Emily caught Jake's gaze, searching for any shred of remorse. Instead, she found a flicker of denial, and she shivered. "Emily," Jake called, his voice barely above a whisper. "You have to believe me. I can fix this." But could he? She was done waiting for a miracle. Faced with the truth, she felt a surge of clarity. This trial had to be the end of something or the beginning of a new chapter. The room fell silent as the next witness approached. Emily could sense the final rush building, like the calm before a storm. Would they plunge further into Jake's deceit or reveal a golden opportunity to break free? As the woman lifted her hand to take an oath, Emily's pulse quickened. Was this the moment that would finally tilt the scales? Or would it trap her even more deeply in Jake's spiraling chaos? The tension in the courtroom swelled as the next witness, a petite woman with curly hair, took her place on the stand. She had the look of someone who had spent years avoiding the spotlight but was now being thrust into it. Emily couldn't quite read her expression, but there was a determination in her posture, as if she had finally decided to let go of a burden she had carried for too long. "Your Honor, I'm Melissa," she stated, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "I was Jake's assistant for 3 years." Emily's heart raced. Another person connected to the web of deceit. She couldn't help but remember the late-night phone calls she'd made, the little lies Jake had told her to cover his tracks. What would Melissa reveal? "Please proceed, Ms. Andrews," the judge encouraged. Melissa hesitated, her eyes drifting to Jake momentarily before she focused back on the judge. "I adored Jake. I really did. He was the smartest, most talented person in the office, but his behavior began to change. At first, it was small things: missing documents, strange transactions on our accounts." Jake shifted in his seat, a nervous sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. Emily could see him clenching his fists. And then Melissa took a deep breath. "I found an envelope marked confidential in his drawer." "I opened it," gasps echoed in the courtroom, and Jake shot a look that could kill. "And it outlined plans for a marketing campaign that he assured the board had been fully approved." "It was a lie, Your Honor. There were no agreements." The implications raced through the room like a wildfire. The color drained from Jake's face, and Emily felt her insides twist. "Jake made me feel like I couldn't speak up," Melissa continued, her voice trembling now. "I often second-guessed my instincts because he had a way of making everyone feel unstable, like they might lose their jobs if they questioned him." It was a familiar story, and every word dripped with sadness. Emily's heart ached for Melissa, who had been drawn in by Jake's charisma and confidence. "What did you do?" the prosecutor asked, urgency in his tone. "I tried to talk to him about it," Melissa replied quietly, "but he brushed me off. And then, one day, I finally reached out to HR about the discrepancies in the accounts." Her eyes glazed with unshed tears. But it was too late. By then, everything had escalated. Jake's gaze met Emily's, desperation in his eyes. "This isn't true. You have to believe me. I didn't save it, Jake." Emily's voice was cold, surprising even herself. She could no longer support the man who had brought her this far into chaos. Melissa took a shaky breath, her resolve shimmering through the emotions flooding her words. "It was terrifying to stand up to him, but I knew I had to. People need to be held accountable for their actions." Emily felt a flicker of admiration for Melissa. Perhaps this woman had stepped into the light just as she had. As Melissa stepped down, the murmurs in the courtroom filled the air. Jake was sinking deeper into his seat, his denial crumbling. He looked lost, and for the first time, Emily felt a wave of pity wash over her. Then came the moment she had dreaded. Jake turned towards her again. "Emily, please." His voice cracked, and a sheen of desperation lodged itself in her chest. She could feel the weight bearing down on her. The echoes of all the lies, the spiraling chaos they had finally caught up with him. But perhaps this was also freeing. It was time to reclaim her story, to shed the layers of deceit that had clouded their lives. As the next witness approached, a sense of foreboding mingled with an unexpected sense of hope. What story would they tell? Would it be another blow to Jake, or perhaps a path for her own healing? A profound question lingered in the air. What if this was Emily's moment to turn the tide, to find her voice amongst the wreckage? Emily held her breath as the next witness stepped up. A tall man with a weathered face and an undeniable air of authority took his seat. He cleared his throat, the weight of his presence resonating in the courtroom. Was he a friend or another piece of the puzzle that would lay Jake bare for all to see? "Your Honor, I'm Paul Rivers," he said, his voice steady. "I've worked for the company for over 15 years, most recently as the Director of Finance." Eyes darted around the room, weighing the significance of this man. Emily leaned closer. The finance director knew the ins and outs of the operations better than anyone. If he had something to say, it would carry weight. "Mr. Rivers," the prosecutor began, "can you tell us about the financial state of the company?" Paul nodded, the corners of his mouth drawing down a bit. The company was doing well initially, but over the last year, I noticed discrepancies I couldn't ignore. Huge sums missing from our marketing budget, transactions that couldn't be traced. When I brought it to Jake's attention, he assured me it was all a misunderstanding. Emily's heart sank. There it was again, the man she had once trusted was twisting the facts and trying to manipulate yet another. She glanced at Jake, his face now a shade of sickly green. Did you investigate these discrepancies further? The prosecutor pressed, leaning forward. Yes, Paul replied, his expression resolute. I did an internal audit, and what I found was alarming. We were losing money every month, much more than I had anticipated. Eventually, I insisted on taking my findings to higher management. Jake shifted uncomfortably, eyes flitting from Paul to Emily, barely able to mask the flicker of panic in his gaze. What did you find? The prosecutor asked. The numbers didn't add up, Paul said. And when I confronted Jake with the detailed report, he didn't react well. He told me to back off. He implied that I was putting my job at risk if I continued digging. But I couldn't stay silent. I went to HR after that, and soon after, everything spiraled. The investigations began. Silence hung over the courtroom as Paul's words sank in. Emily's chest tightened. Each revelation felt like a punch, exposing deeper layers of Jake's betrayal. Did Jake ever confess or show any remorse about the actions he took? The prosecutor continued. Paul hesitated, then shook his head. No, he was always defensive. Never took responsibility. But I knew I had to do the right thing, for the sake of our team. He locked eyes with the jurors. And for the integrity of the company. Emily's heart swelled with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. Here was another person willing to stand up against Jake, who had used his charm to hold others in submission. Slowly, she felt her resolve strengthening. As Paul stepped down, the whispers in the courtroom became a murmur of unease. Jake's composure was fading, his mask slipping further away. Then, unexpectedly, the judge turned to Emily. Ms. Thompson, would you like to say something? Emily's heart raced. All eyes were on her now. She felt exposed but empowered. Here was her chance. Your Honor, she began, her voice steadier than she felt, I never wanted to be in this position. I loved Jake, but I can no longer support the lies that have hurt so many. Jake's face fell, and Emily felt the rush of clarity in her words. I want to reclaim my truth, she added, glancing over at Paul. I want to be silent anymore. No one should live in fear because of someone else's greed. The room remained still, the air crackling with the weight of her declaration. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of freedom and a flicker of hope. Maybe there was a way out of this darkness. As the day's proceedings came to an end, Emily left the courtroom with a renewed sense of purpose. But deep inside, dread twisted her stomach. Would Jake retaliate? What would he do next? She looked back as she stepped through the doorway, feeling as if she had just embarked on a journey that would change everything. What awaited her on the other side? The days following the trial swept by like a fast-moving train, each moment filled with uncertainty. Emily pored over the testimony transcripts, her heart still racing with the memory of that pivotal day in court. But her resolve had only grown stronger. She had taken the stand, reclaiming her voice, and with each word she shared, she had also unburdened herself from years of deceit. Yet Jake's reaction had been wild. The chaos he unleashed during the trial had left her worrying about his next move. One evening, as the golden sunset stretched across the sky, Emily sat at the kitchen table, her fingers dancing over the crisp paper, forming notes for her upcoming meeting with her attorney. She was determined to close the chapter on this part of her life. Just then, a soft knock echoed from the front door. It was Sylvia, holding a casserole dish like a shield of comfort. Thought you could use some love, Sylvia smiled, her warm presence instantly easing Emily's tension. Together, they sat at the table, the delightful aroma wafting through the air, and Emily found herself opening up about her fears. What if he retaliates? She whispered, her voice barely rising above the sound of the clinking silverware. Emily, Sylvia said, gently placing a hand on hers, you've already faced the lioness den. Whatever comes next, you're stronger than you think. And remember, you have all of us. Their conversation sparked a fire in Emily. She had transformed from a woman who had endured years of Jake's lies to someone who was ready to break free. With every supportive word from her community, she felt her fears shrinking, replaced by a newfound confidence. The following week, she stood before her attorney, ready to discuss the next steps. I want to file for full custody of Sam and Mia, she stated firmly. As the lawyer nodded, Emily felt a surge of power flow through her. This was her chance to provide her children with a life devoid of the shadows Jake had cast. Let us secure your safety while we're at it, her attorney added. We'll request a protective order. Emily breathed a sigh of relief, imagining a stable future for her children, where laughter filled their home instead of fear. After completing the paperwork, she returned home, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She realized she was no longer just surviving, she was thriving. She spent the evenings working on a blog focused on family empowerment, sharing her story, her struggles, and everything she was learning. One afternoon, while typing away, an unexpected notification popped up on her screen, a message from Lisa, the woman who had bravely testified against Jake. I saw your blog. It's inspiring. Let us meet, the message read. Enthusiasm bubbled inside Emily as she quickly responded. When they met at a local cafe, their conversation flowed effortlessly. Lisa shared her own struggles, her own battles. They bonded over fairy tales started by broken men but realized they were both now penning their stories toward the light. As days passed, Emily found herself immersed in this new journey, filled with meaning. She organized a community support group, bringing together parents who faced similar situations. They met every week, sharing stories, and empowering one another. Then, one fateful evening, moments after a meeting ended, a familiar figure appeared at the door. Jake had come to confront her. Emily, he sneered, trying to mask the desperation in his voice. You're making a big mistake. You'll regret this. His tone dripped with anger, but Emily stood her ground, her heart racing yet resolute. Jake, this isn't just about us anymore. This is about our kids, she replied, the strength of a lion sitting in her. I won't let you drag them down with you. The tension crackled. For the first time in a long time, Emily refused to falter. Jake's facade crumbled, revealing a man who was not in control. You think you can do this without me? He challenged, his mask slipping further. I don't need you, she stated, her voice steady. I can take care of our children without your poison lingering around. He glared, searching for a crack in her armor. You'll be sorry. No, I won't, Emily countered. With that, she walked away, stepping out into the bright night, filled with determination. Days turned into weeks, and as court dates approached, Emily felt ready. Ready for closure, ready for a fresh start, ready to embrace a future without Jake's deceit. The courtroom was nothing short of a battleground. But as Emily took the stand, surrounded by the support of her community, she was transformed. Every testimony echoed like a shield, bolstering her confidence as she shared her story one last time. And when the judge's gavel fell, announcing a new beginning for Emily and her children, tears of joy rushed down her cheeks. They were free. A new life awaited them, painted vividly with the colors of hope, laughter, and possibilities. As she stepped out of the courthouse, she knew she wouldn't just be okay, she would thrive. Emily felt a rush of gratitude wash over her. She de-transformed pain into strength, built a community from the ashes of betrayal, and most importantly, found herself again. This was just the beginning of her amazing life-changing triumph. Now, this is your moment. You need to subscribe now to never miss our exclusive stories. Leave a like right now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your engagement fuels this community. Let us uplift each other together.